and welcome to the summit, Yoga Beyond Exercise, conversations to heal and lead us into the new paradigm of peace, harmony, and prosperity. My name is Julie Upton, and I am your host for this 21-day experience extravaganza adventure in just learning, listening, communicating, communing with each other on these amazing topics that are important to all of us: health, finances, spirituality, technology, and the new paradigm, of course. So, we're going to be discussing what is that new paradigm, why it's important to know what it is, so that you can have a better understanding of where we're going as individuals and as a species. A little bit about me: I have a background in yoga, Buddhism, and journalism, actually. So during this pandemic, saw that there was a great need for more high vibrational frequency content to be put out there. My first guest, my first conversation brought to you today is with Nilima Bhat. She is an author of two different books. She wrote a book called The Journey from Illness to Wholeness, and she also wrote Shakti Leadership. I came across the book Shakti Leadership several years ago, and it's just been such a beautiful and powerful experience to kind of see what Shakti and what leadership means in our modern day life. So Nilima is a visionary. She's a speaker. She's a facilitator, a coach. She works in the fields of personal mastery, leadership, gender equality, and well-being. She is actually currently focused on building the Shakti Fellowship, which is a global network of conscious women leaders and entrepreneurs who collaborate to create prosperity and beauty through the exchange of multiple forms of capital. So that's amazing. There's your prosperity. It's fully embodied in everything about this summit. So thank you, Nilima, for joining us. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And then don't forget to tune in tomorrow for part 2 of 21. Enjoy. Welcome, Nilima Bhat, for coming on to the Yoga Beyond Exercise Summit today. We're so grateful to have you here with us.
Great to be here, Julie. I love the theme of your summit. So there's no ways I was not going to be on it. Like, yes. Thank you.
Oh, well, that's a great first question. So how did you feel when you first saw the theme of the summit? What was like the first thoughts that you had about like what you would want to share?
I'm not sure this would even be first thoughts. I'd probably launch right in because today we're recording on the 24th of November, and it is called Siddhi Day in the Sri Aurobindo Ashram. And I'm a follower and practitioner of the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, based out of Pondicherry. It's a global, teaching. And at the end of all the many books that he wrote, if you could sum up, at the end of every Upanishad, there is a Mahavakya. There is one great statement that captures the entire scripture, right? So his Mahavakya has 4 words, and it's called all life is yoga. So when you write yoga beyond exercise, it was what I bring is the other extreme, the bookend to this thing that, yes, the Western world and the non-Indian world has been introduced to the idea of yoga by getting on a mat and doing your breathing exercises, the pranayam, and then doing the stretches and postures, the asanas, and then maybe a little bit of chanting before and after, and maybe lying down in shavasana and yoga nidra. And that itself is so tremendous, like, wow, if you're really ready and you dedicate yourself to that practice, that itself could lead you to awakening and enlightenment, right? But the truth is, yoga is, it's like this, these were the appetizers for for the big banquet that is actually yoga. They were meant to whet the appetite so that the practitioner could then, in a way, have cleaned the usual levels of being that cover us from the core and the essence of who we are. So when you get your body warmed up and you get your breath relaxed, you get your mind clear, now you can move into the deeper and wider states of awareness and access deeper and wider states of reality, correct? So that is really where yoga goes. And so the word yoga is, as I'm sure everyone knows by now, it's about union between our human self and our divine self, our complete self, so to speak, the union between our limited self and our unlimited self, correct? That is really yoga. So when Sri Aurobindo says all life is yoga, it's an approach, it is a path to yoga which begins once you get off the mat, right? It begins once you are done exercising. It's what happens after. And he even goes on to say it's not even enlightenment. The integral yoga begins after enlightenment. Okay, which is the actual transformation ultimately of not just the consciousness, but also our physical body, you know, which is the big, hairy goal of integral yoga when we say all life is yoga. And essentially a very simple way to practice all life is yoga and yoga beyond exercise is to recognize that there is a presence at all times in everything and a source from which we have come. That is the presence. So it's always here with us. We call that source the mother, and it is intelligent. It is a force. You can enter into relationship with it. You can dialogue it. You can experience every moment in life with it, like a companion, and like being in a oneness with that greater self. And so when we say all life is yoga, when he teaches, Sri Aurobindo teaches all life is yoga, he's saying at this moment when Julie and Nilima are having a conversation, remember you're also having that conversation with this presence. And the presence, you know, the mother is in the room, and offer it to her, invite her in, and feel, you know, you just by doing that, you enlarge the context, right? And you divinize it, you make it sacred, you make it holy. And very subtly something shifts. You know, we're able to go beyond the mini me and experience a greater sense of self, you know. So that then come through our yoga, you know, because this is not just a conversation. This has now become a yoga. Any attempt or any methodized approach to self-perfection, which is about connecting with all that we can be, is a yoga. So when you're eating, you know, offer it to that presence and say, come eat with me. And then even the act of eating becomes a yoga. So you go through your whole day, your breath and your breathing becomes a yoga. The thoughts that move in your head, you can be in an attitude of gratitude and consecration, surrendering and offering them up to that higher intelligence and saying, you know, thy will be done. Move these thoughts into their fullness. And just that moment to moment consecration and surrender and self-offering. So there are just three simple statements that we remember at the end of everything we learn in integral yoga, you know, which says, all life is yoga, therefore remember and offer everything in every moment. to that higher presence, that deepest, widest self that you are. Bring it in, offer it all the time, offer to it all the time. And the third is divinize everything. There is no such thing as this is the profane and this is the, sacred. Everything is like either everything is divine or nothing is, right? So then just choose to say everything is divine, and I'm going to therefore divinize and lift up everything. So it's a very interesting inner practice in integral yoga. And little by little you start, I laughingly call this journey the mythopoetic life, so make everything a mythic experience, make everything a poetic experience, and find symbolism, find a deeper meaning, find a deeper purpose, because then it becomes exciting and inspiring and meaningful, right? Otherwise, what's the point? In the Buddhist way, they will say life is essentially meaningless. So if you tell a poor quality story about it, you will have a poor quality experience. But if you tell a high quality story about it, you will have a high quality experience. So, you get to choose the experience you're having. So I choose integral yoga, which is, I love being on the mat. Okay, it's one of the swiftest way to get to bliss in my experience. The asanas and the pranayam are just fabulous, which is genius. All the sages who invented them and brought them down and made them available to us, deep gratitude to each of them. But then beyond that, to then start looking at everything as an opportunity to do yoga, to divinize everything.
Yeah. So how would you recommend, I know there's a lot of people, we were talking, that have a lot of fear, for instance, right now, like with what's happening in the world around COVID and lockdowns and financial structures. Maybe you could just talk about that and how you would, in integral yoga, see the divinity in things that maybe are more difficult to see the divinity in.
It's really like saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So you literally have to just do the yoga of remembering and offering every moment that is happening to you. So when fear comes, to remember to pause, to remember to step back, to remember to breathe and connect with your sacred heart, your deeper heart, where the presence is, to invite and call in, invoke whatever form or shape you see the divine. For me, it is the mother. Call that presence in and say, help me meet this fear. Experience this fear with me, Mom. Let's do this together. I offer it to you. And at all times to be in a state of, first of all, the ability to insert pause and step back from the hijack, right? All the negative emotions are essentially a hijack of our presence. So the first thing we have to do is insert pause and step back and return to presence, return to breath, return to that sense of an inner presence, a divinity within. And so I use affirmations. I have some wonderful affirmations that I have picked up from many different traditions. From the Enneagram, for example, which says, I go back into my spine, I make myself tall, I let my breath move up and down my spine and be aware that it is connecting me back to my central axis that connects me to heaven and earth, and I found my space in this moment in time. And then I say, I have nothing to defend. I have nothing to promote, and I have nothing to fear. In this moment, I'm okay, right? So I remind myself that right this moment, I'm okay. And it's a bit like what the Alcoholic Anonymous does, take it one day at a time. And I go and say, take it one breath at a time. And know that in this moment, in this breath, you are okay. So, and then to remember, all I need is within me. All I need comes to me. And this is the realization, or the, the trust that this is an intelligent system that we are a part of, and I'm a part of it. So there is already this information superhighway and resources superhighway. Just like, when I exhale, I'm not worried if there's going to be oxygen for my next inhale, right? So you trust it's okay to exhale because you're going to be able to inhale. So you there is an innate trust in the system called life. So to know that all I need comes to me. If I'm still here in my body, if I've been given my next breath, I'm also going to be brought to the next thing I need to live my full breath and my full day and my full year and my full life, right? So all I need comes to me, and all I need flows through me. And then the last three statements I like to add are, the ego that always comes in with the limiting self, the limited self, that I'm not enough, I don't have enough, and there isn't enough for everyone. That's what immediately puts us in our constricted self and disconnects us from our state of yoga, disconnects us from our state of union with source and the system we are a part of, right? The true divine system that we're a part of. So when I say, I am enough, I have enough, and there is enough for all, or we can share, it kind of returns me to sanity. So I would offer this presence practice to our listeners. It's available for free on my website, and just Google Shakti Leadership Presence Practice. And it's a 10-minute practice, which kind of uses your body, breath, mind, heart, senses to bring you back into a state of presence where you can know these to be truths that you are affirming and not just statements. So yeah, really, Julie, this, and we're saying this to our listeners, and we just have to remember to return to presence. That's it. Because when we lose presence is when we get lost in all the fears, all the pain of separation, all the sense of shame, guilt. Everything comes when we lose presence. So the master key is to first return to presence. And from there, you will step by step, one bite at a time, be able to cope with whatever is in your reality.
Thank you. Yeah, because if it isn't, COVID-19, it's going to be something else. It's going to be a relationship breakup. It's going to be a computer not booting up. It's always going to be something. But we have made such a habit as human beings to constantly be in a state of disconnect or focusing on the external for some sort of compensation, whether it's happiness or success or something like that. And I think this is the root of the great awakening that's happening right now. I think it's a clear it's clear to us all that everything is happening inside of us. So anything that's coming up right now is the gift. It's the gift. It's like, oh, okay, it's coming up. It feels hard, but it always feels hard when it comes up. And they say that, I think you and I are both familiar with the hero's journey. It's hard to have a hero's journey when there's no catalyst,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
And that's what yoga has always been about for me. It's knowing exactly what you were saying. It's knowing that I am created and I am enough,
Mm.
you know. And you mentioned the book that you wrote, Shakti Leadership, which I think is a great book. I devoured it, and I've since passed it around to many people and bought it for many people. But could you
Thank
share with us what is, you said Shakti, and there's some people that aren't going to know what that means, and it's very related to the topic right now. So could you
you.
share with us about Shakti?
Um, I was just thinking, people have learned the word yoga around the world. I think, since the year 2000, I come from the Shivananda yoga tradition, and Swami Mahadevananda, who was the head of the Shivananda uh, centers at that time. I remember him saying, this is going to be the century of yoga, and literally 2000 onwards, yoga just boomed, right? It just literally, I think he had the gift of prophecy there. And so the world knows yoga. And I was thinking just before I came on the call with you, saying the truth is there can be no yoga without Shakti, right? It's like saying you have the most wonderful car, but if you don't have fuel or gas in the tank, that car is not going anywhere. So, yoga, for your body to be able to do yoga, for your mind to be able to do yoga, for your breath to be able to do yoga, you need some level of power of fuel, which moves you, right? You need some agency to be able to do something, and that power that is innate to existence is called Shakti. And it is called the mother because it is the source force from which all other powers are generated. So, right from the electromagnetic spectrum, which is this very inanimate kind of power, all the way to the power of thought and spiritual powers, etc., etc. All, it's a spectrum, and this entire spectrum of force, energy, power, each one having its unique vibration, its unique fingerprint, its unique intelligence, its unique purpose, that entire spectrum is called Shakti, the mother, from which we all emerge, and in whom we all. So even though technically you can say we're born out of our biological mother's womb, but we are never capable of leaving the divine mother's womb, because there is nothing beyond that to leave and be born into, so to speak. So no matter what we leave, we will always be in the womb, like, if you wish, the toroidal ring of the spectrum of consciousness and energy. It's just a matter of different levels and degrees. And that entire thing, that entire field is the flow of Shakti. And the good news is that, great yogis and masters have discovered that this is not just an inanimate force that can be manipulated and used for our um, interests, which sometimes we tend to do. For example, in when they do qigong, or you have all these in karate, you can use your force and you can break things and so on, and um, yes, it is a force that one can master and learn to also therefore manipulate, but in a yogic approach, it would be quite the opposite. It would say all force belongs to the Divine Mother, and we cannot but be children and units of that. So we can't hope to ever exceed that. So our best chance is to be in relationship as a child to a mother, and to be in an attitude of gratitude and love um, and surrender to that force and that intelligence instead of trying to manipulate it. So we kind of give it back to say, thy will be done, and thy will is my peace. And that's what the great masters would do once they find the siddhi, or the perfection, the ability to use Shakti and move Shakti, uh, is the realization that with great power comes great responsibility. And your best chance is to actually offer that power right back to the consciousness from which it came, and ask to be in service of it, ask to be an instrument of it, a channel for it. So that is the Shakti that's needed in the world today, because if it is the ultimate power, the power we are busy fighting over is privilege power and brute force, and going to war over land and all kinds of things. If you see the crazy polarization in the world, it's essentially the polarization of the oppressor versus the oppressed, the powerful over the weak, and so. And I'm saying, with like fish dying of thirst when we're all swimming in the ocean of power, which is Shakti, right? You can't not be in Shakti. There is no place where Shakti isn't. So if we can all learn that there is enough power to go around, and we don't need to make someone lose or take someone's power away in order to meet our needs, that will heal the world to a great, great extent. I think we will come home to ourselves. We will know that we are enough, we have enough power. We'll be able to but it takes work. It takes the work of, but as I was reading somewhere, everything's hard, um, getting married is hard and getting divorced is hard. So choose your hard, and sometimes getting divorced may be the right thing to do if the marriage is abusive, etc. So everything is hard. So even the struggle for power is hard. We might as well put in that effort to find the source of true power, right? And if we can, like digging a well, find the source of Shakti itself, then we flow from that inner place of empowerment and awareness and healing, and we get a sense of what to do, what's the right thing to do at the right moment. We flow in alignment with the greater system, and we will be sourced and resourced and fed and taken care of by the system that has created us for its purpose, right? So then everything we need to fulfill that purpose will also naturally come to us. Joe Jaworski's book Synchronicity, he uses his own language to explain this, but this is it. When we learn how to tap into Shakti and align with Shakti, which is this great flow of energy and consciousness in the system that we are, once we know how to tap into that, and that's what all yoga practice eventually gets you to, and there are many other practice. In fact, any practice that gets you to your source and that flow is a yoga. So it may be called by any other name, but technically that's a yoga, right? Once we can do the work of connecting with Shakti, we will automatically find harmony within and with each other, and learn how to use the resources of this planet consciously, and we become part of the ecosystem. When we know Shakti, we become the ecological self that Joanna Macy talks about. you know um, we become one with everything, and we know we are the same energy that's moving through everything, and we are all just waves of that ocean, and we rise and we return from that same ocean. It's a great relief to be able to understand yourself in that way. Know yourself in that way. And Shakti, being the mother, is a very benign way of understanding divinity. You know, having said that, remember the mother also has her fierce face, and but that too is her way of loving her creation. So it's not as if it's all sweetness and honey and kindness, but it's always love. Let's not forget that. It's always love. It can be fierce, it can be tough, it can feel, oh my God, this is the worst thing happening. But if we can remember to stay present and call on the mother and be in a state of surrender to that Shakti, uh, we will start experiencing life almost as if we are held through it, almost as if there's a safety net that will never fully, or there's a lifeline that will never let us go. Right?
Yeah, that's been the greatest gift that I've given to myself, or that yoga has provided, that connection for me to have access to that flow, that life force energy. And yeah, and I love the Shakti principle, because it makes sense. There's the Shiva and the Shakti, and it's like the Shakti, I always say, is like the inspiration for the action of Shiva. Otherwise, Shiva, right? Shavasana, is dormant energy. It's
Yes.
dead energy without the Shakti, without the the inspiration.
To move it, yes.
Yeah, it needs the Shiva needs the energy to move it. And so when you tap
The creativity,
the
right? The
creativity,
creative principle.
and that's the world we're we're moving into now, where people are awake to that energy that is naturally there all the time. It's like I always say, like, you look outside, and like I saw an alligator, for instance. I live in Florida. So there was an alligator outside in the creek. And he's not thinking, oh, I've got to go look for food. Oh, I've got to
Yeah.
sun myself. He's not thinking that, he's just doing. He's the
Yes.
energy is moving through that creature to do as he does or she does. And it's the same for us. It's just that we have all these faculties and these sense powers. So that's the beauty of being human. We actually can tap into it consciously and then, move with awareness. And it's such a powerful and amazing experience when that happens. And it's our birthright. It's like what we are.
It's I guess because I'm a dancer, I understand what flow feels like, and how to find my flow. Like when you dance, first you're learning the steps and it feels awkward, and you're trying to get the choreography, etc., and you're working at it. And then a day comes when your body has internalized the sequence or whatever it is, and then you can let go, and you don't have to think what's your next step. You can let the music take you. You can let the elements move through you. And that sense of being set free in your own body is yoga to me as well. For me, dance has always been a yoga, because I have been fully myself and fully free, and completely feeling the ananda, the rasa, the juice, the joy of life. Like I am in my element literally when I dance. And so there are moments in life, the more you practice yoga and that inner attitude of gratitude and being present, the more you do that, the more you notice that life is flowing. It doesn't feel like a bicycle whose tires have turned into squares. It doesn't feel like one crazy ride. Whereas when you're in flow, everything is just it. There's no breakdown, right? There's no dissonance, and it when you come out of flow. It goes back to feeling staccato and like, oh, like everything is disjointed and fragmented and like, oh, I lost my flow, right? So because I'm a dancer and I've experienced flow, I know when I'm not in flow.
Mm.
And it's a nice heads up for me to say, Nilima, pause, go back and breathe, do your affirmations, return to center, return to presence, sit it out until you find that center and presence again. And then and trust that even if it's going to take you 15 minutes, 20 minutes to sit down and return to your flow, it's worth that investment of your time, because if you continue being in your non-flow, it'll take you 3 hours to do what you would otherwise do in half an hour when you're present, and much more joyfully.
That is 100% true. Yeah, and it's a tuning in to
Yes.
yourself. Like when we deflect the energy and we give the external energy so much power, that's deflecting away from being here. And that's where all the flow is accessed. And that's actually the asana part, the posture part linked with the breath is such a powerful way to really, be in the body and learn to start listening. I think
So in addition to being a dancer since the age of 8, I've been a yoga practitioner since the year 2002. No, since 1999, actually. Um, and so I am as much in love with asana practice as I am with dance. And yeah, I mean, I can't recommend it enough, what asana practice does for us, you know?
Yeah, getting us into the body. I also dance. I was never good at following steps. I don't have the brain capacity for it. It was weird. I was a very talented dancer, but I could never remember the steps. And I
Yes.
would just like as a little kid, I'd just be like, I just have to dance. And so that's kind of if anything, people, I always say, my asana is dance. I just dance all the time. And I don't even need a mat for that. And you don't really need a mat for asana either all the time. But yeah, anything that gets you, I mean, a runner's high, people know what that is. But like
Yes.
allowing the prana to move through the body, the energy. And it's interesting, even in America that has like these stipulations for like what makes a healthy life. I remember as a little kid, they were always telling this, you got to eat right, you've got to exercise, and you got to keep a good attitude. And it's like everything's going to always come back to those kind of simple things.
Yes.
But on the bigger scale of what that's doing is what we're talking about here. It's accessing that flow,
Yes.
it's accessing, that deeper aspect of what we are and that divinity. And it's quite the adventure because you don't know where it's going to take you. It's animating through.
Yeah. It's the best script writer ever. So, it's got better plans for you than your mini me can make up for yourself. So that's my experience.
That's a that's the best part. Yeah, it creates a storyline that is so much better than anything the small self could ever drum up in their imagination.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much more fun. It's so much more real. It's so much more effortless after you get there. Um, it's so much, yeah, it's so much more joyful and easeful, and yeah, it's the best rides ever when you're in flow.
I agree. Best ride ever. Yeah, and that's why people really can come together. You know, you can be from anywhere or anything and it doesn't matter because we're all being breathed by the same energy. I always say we're all brothers and sisters, we're all related. There is no separation between us, just in the mind. There's this sense of separation, but the truth is that same energy is is flowing through us all, and it's just a matter of how we are allowing that process to take place, to happen.
Just requires the work of making yourself as quiet as possible on the inside so that you can feel the wave of Shakti when it rises, and then allow yourself to be moved by it, you know. Um, that's the work we have to do, is to find the inner silence, the inner state of ease and calm, so that we get moved when the inspiration comes, when life's longing for itself rises in us. We rise with it, and that's our best chance of having our wish fulfilled, because that's life's wish for itself rather than something we made up. And the full force of life is available for the fulfillment of that wish. And so the other thing about, being in a state of connection with your Shakti and your juice and your flow, your is in a way you're high on life, and then you don't need those addictive things, right? You don't need alcohol, you don't need cigarettes, you don't need drugs. um, I'm always joking, like, I'm high on life. I feel it's such a fabulous ride. You know, there's no hole that needs to be filled, because from that hole is gushing the Shakti right now. So it's like it's taking me along.
Yeah.
I used to feel the hole in the soul years ago when I was finding myself lost in my corporate career. And towards the end of the beginning was wonderful. It was full of Shakti, but the last year of my 10 years of my corporate life, that's when I lost the connection. I lost the mojo. I lost this, Shakti and connection, and everything just felt like there was a hole in the soul, you know. And I felt I'm claustrophobic. I felt I'm being crushed inside, like I had no air to breathe. I felt the need to, I just felt the need to go somewhere and breathe the full breath of life. And basically, I'd lost my flow. And there was a hole in the soul. And as soon as I went and found the soul and found the Shakti flow, without, there's been no hole since.
That's actually a good point, and sometimes even with the flow going through or in your stages of allowing that full presence to be experienced, things have to go away in order for something new to arise. And so, like, when your corporate job was not, at one time, it had felt fulfilling. And then at some point, it didn't. I think about relationships being the same way, I'm not married. So, say I have a partner, you know, sometimes it's time to separate. And it doesn't have to always be in an ill way. It can be very peaceful and harmonious. That's up to
Yes.
us, and it doesn't, it's so like how we leave the job or how we leave a relationship or how we shift a house or anything. It's it's part of the flow. And
Yeah.
so I feel, like we're these, creatures that do need to shed skins quite, you know, it's as often as needed, and to be aware of
One of,
that.
one of the things I teach is the dance of the five elements, which is exactly about this, that how do you be in the phase of that element and the movement of that element when it is in your presence. But everything being a flow, when that phase ends, you should be ready to release and let it go and know how to transition into the next element. And the next element comes with its movement and a whole different texture and way of being in the body and moving, and to know how to now embrace that, right? So part of yoga and part of the practice of flow is learning how to release and let go something when it's done, and how to also be in that no man's land, that bardo state, until the next thing reveals itself, because that too is a competence or a muscle to be developed. How to be with a state of not knowing, and just nothing happening. you know that is almost like a gestation moment where you're almost feeling like the wind's being sucked out of you, and you may think, oh, am I depressed? To say, oh, this too is a feeling, this too is an experience I have to wait with. And if I don't label it as a low or a depression, I just be with it and trust that this too shall pass. Sure enough, the next thing comes that then I have to dance with and be with, you know. So yeah, absolutely. If we can master life the way we've mastered our breathing, we don't hold on to the exhale, we let it go, knowing that there's going to be an inhale coming right after, right? So yeah, absolutely. Everything in life has to grow and change. And even relationships, you don't necessarily have to keep changing partners if the partner and you are also growing and allowing the relationship to evolve. Then you actually feel the death of the old relationship. You kind of feel like something that's gone, like past, and then you have to wait it out until the new phase reveals its face, and you learn how to move with that. That too is a yoga. I think relationship is one of the most difficult and also most fulfilling yogas.
Hmm, that's a good point. Yeah, I always say that to people, like relationships, they change. They don't end, like if it, parts and essences of them shift. Like a girlfriend you spend all your time with for so long, and then all of a sudden things change and morph and things happen, and it doesn't mean that you don't love them, and but you're not spending every day with them, or however that works. And the love doesn't change, but the way that we're relating to each other changes. And yeah, it's a dance. It's that flow that we've been talking about, and it's having the integrity of love. That's how I feel it, or put a word to it, is that love, that divine love that I have for creation itself, and the respect that I have for it, and I think anybody who's listening to this will know, when you're not listening, when you're trying to force something and then things aren't happening. It's these things that we just do all the time and we think is life, and it's okay. It's like, yeah, but it can be, it doesn't have to be that hard, you know? It can be in a more of a flow. And that's when innovation happens. That's when, technology arises. And a person who, with no education, can be inspired to invent something totally new. I know without a shadow of a doubt that we're going to just start seeing this in droves. We're going to start seeing, new things created that the mind could never have imagined before, just like before cell phones, right? And
Yes.
and because that's that nature of coming into union with that energy, that Shakti energy. And what I, when I think of the new paradigm, that's how I that's what I feel. It's like this awareness of this energy is coming into the consciousness of more people. And so that state will allow for this to kind of shine, and we'll start seeing that in the external world. I every day I'm like, ooh, ooh, ooh.
There's a saying in Hindi, tere muh mein ghee shakkar, which is lots of sweetness and in your mouth when you say that, like I'm wishing you yummy things because of what you just said, so may that be so, may that be so.
Yeah, may that be so. Yes. Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Nilima, so much for coming on and being a part of this summit series. I appreciate your time and your journey and your Shakti with us. And people
Thank
can,
you, Julie. It's been a total delight.
yeah, and people can find you at shaktileadership.com. Your information will be on your speaker page so people can reach out to you and experience you as in your book as I have. And yeah.
And there are lots of under the resources section, free resources. There are lots of meditations, so absolutely go out and check it out.
Oh, great. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you.
Bye now.